over here. We're continuing this series where we're exploring all different different countries, interesting countries, and exploring what was the Jewish community like in all those places. And it's actually interesting, the history of the Jews in Honduras, they actually date back from the colonial period, I think during the proceedings of the Inquisition, with the arrival of the Sephardic Jews to Honduras soil. And now it's actually interesting, I think on the date of April 2020, in Honduras there are 390 self-identified Jews who have gained the Honduran residence. It's estimated that population in Honduras is approximately just over 1,000 people. So that's very, very interesting. Now, the Honduran Jews, let's just say, are able to practice Judaism peacefully and are included in Honduran politics and culture. That's very interesting. It's primarily concentrated in an area called Teguc, Galpa, and San Pedro Sula, where there are synagogues. And Honduras was one of the first countries to recognize the State of Israel in 1948. And the Jewish community in Honduras obviously benefited greatly from the Israeli aid. Okay, so let's explore a bit about the history, just going back. Now, Sephardic Jews crossed the Atlantic Ocean on Spanish ships. They first became settlers, then officials of the crown. They became sailors, merchants, and other professionals. Their vision was to reach a piece of land to call home, first in Seville, then in the Spanish viceroyalties, the municipality of Trinidad in the department of Santa, I think, Barraria, I hope I pronounced it correctly. Let's say has deep Jewish historical roots and is related to Jewish society. There are many other municipalities that share these foundational roots. Let's just say, I think might be more Christianized, let's just say. But when the province of Honduras was founded and the city of Comayagüe was designated as its capital, several Jewish people would settle there. Very interesting enough. I think they were distributed throughout the Honduran territory as it grew in, let's say, commercial importance as a policy between the 7th and 9th century. Honduras was under the conservative government of Captain General Jose Mario Medina. A national congress issued an immigration law, I think come February 26th, in 1866. Now, I think this law gave all foreigners who wanted to reside at that point in time in the country, give them access. Now, the political constitution of 1876 will also reflect the importance of immigration in the national territory. 19th century will also be landmark time period. It was between 1875 and 1915, just before the First World War, 45 million Europeans crossed the Atlantic in search of better living conditions on the American continent. Of these migrations, a total of 2,500,000 were Jews from different European contexts. With the opening, let's say, of the country to the world, thanks to liberal reform, various groups were given the opportunity to migrate to Honduras. And very interesting. The, let's say, migratory movement included numerous Jews who found a new home in Honduras at that point in time, where they could prosper and contribute to the development of the country's economy. The arrival of these immigrants enriched the country's ethnic diversity and also brought with them traditions that were integrated, let's say, more into Honduran society, thus strengthening the nation's, let's say, social fabric, economic growth at that specific point in time. Now, 20th century, let's explore a bit within regards to that. Very interesting. Anyone joining in, we're exploring the history of the country Honduras, which is always a great privilege. We've spoken about various other countries already here inside the series, and now we happen to speak about Honduras today. The First World War obviously would lead many people to Jewish merchants and financiers take their fortunes out of Europe, with some moving to the United States of America, Latin American countries, mainly the southern cone, and others to Russia. And Honduras was another place. The arrival of European Jews began in full swing in the year 1920. Between 1920 and I think it was about 1940, the majority of Jews who arrived in the country were Ashkenazi Jews of German, Polish, and Romanian origin, fleeing from Europe. obviously due to the onset of the Second World War. Now, many of these immigrated in 1939, when a total of 455 Germans were registered in Honduras, and 95 of them were Jewish, actually, so that was a decent proportion, let's just say. And the following year, there was a decree was issued during the administration of Dr. Vicente Mejia Colindres, in which immigration office was created and attached to the Ministry of the Interior. Colindres also oversaw the passage of a law that authorized foreigners of Arab, Chinese, Turkish, Syrian, Armenian, Palestinian, and African ethnicity, as well as Indians, also called colis, to immigrate to Honduras, provided that they bring 5,000 silver pesos and that they would make a deposit to the state coffers of, I think, 500 silver pesos per person within 2 months of arrival in the country. Now, 25 Jewish citizens were naturalized between 1946 and 1956, 19 of which were Poles, which was the equivalent of 76% of naturalizations completed. Very, very interesting. So we can say more within regards to that. And I think the President of Honduras allowed the entry of Jews during the Second World War. With influence, there was influence of the community in of itself, and very interesting. Talking a bit about the 21st century, in 2001, Honduras elected its first Jewish president, someone named Ricardo Maduro Joyce. He was a candidate for the National Party, and he served his term from 2002 to 2006. So that was a 4-year period. This victory was as an extraordinary case, given that the vast majority of presidents of Honduras, as well as the rest of Latin America, until then had been Roman Catholics, and that the Jewish Honduran community had always been very small, although it did have some, let's say, weight in the social and political sphere. That's something we have to point out over here. Okay, now I think recently some Honduran Jews made Aliyah to Israel due to, unfortunately, anti-Semitism. This was reported over in the Wikipedia article. In 2018, members of the Rosenthal family were charged for some reasons, and so he was a former minister of investment, if I'm not mistaken, and he's another person, I think, that made his mark in Honduras, let's just say. Okay, so let's speak a bit more about modern day. So the Jewish community of Honduras lives in total social stability, a mutual cooperation, a rest of the Honduran population, mainly Christians. Jews in Honduras are very acculturated, let's just say, to the Honduran identity, sharing and activity, participating in the traditions, customs, and daily life of the country. This harmony has allowed the construction of new synagogues, reflecting the growth and strengthening of the Jewish community in the country. In recent years, I think there was also an increase of conversions of Honduras to Judaism, indicating the growth in interest and a broader cultural acceptance of religious diversity in Honduras. I don't know about these conversions. You have to look more within regards to that. Were they all Orthodox conversions? That's I'm not sure about. So maybe we'll have some clarity as it comes on. Now, as we mentioned before, the second or third generation Jews who descended Ashkenazim who came to the country at the end of the 19th century managed to, let's say, adapt slightly better to Honduran society, together with a propensity of mixed marriages with local Christian population. Obviously, that will hit everywhere if there's not a strong Torah community, and this will, let's just say, make the descendants themselves really get Honduran identity, which obviously, as an Orthodox Jewish channel, we want to see the Jewish community, Orthodox Jewish community, thriving in all places. That's, I'll say, here from the onset over here, because we don't want intermarriage, we don't want assimilation. Now, this would bring, let's say, religious change, with some becoming secular Jews or converting, unfortunately, to Christianity on Honduran soil. Okay, so Judaism in Honduras. There are 2 Jewish congregations in Honduras, one located at an area called Teguc Igalapa, and the other is in San Pedro Sula. So the first synagogue in Teguc Igalapa was a Shavit Ajim synagogue. It was built in 1997. However, I think it was destroyed in 1998 by the Hurricane Mitch, and it was rebuilt come 2002 with international aid. And the other one is I think it's called the Magen David Synagogue. It's located in San Pedro area, if I'm not mistaken. And there are no Jewish day schools in Honduras, but there's educational activities like Jewish Sunday school, the Talmud Torah. Classes are generally available, I think, in Tudu Kepala, respectively. Also, that's something we have to point out. Let's talk about Magen David Synagogue. Now, according to the Wikipedia website, it's considered a conservative Jewish congregation. So that, I'm not so sure about the insights announced with regards to if it is or not, or would it become that more recently. And it's located, as we said before, on San Pedro Sula, in the Corte department of Honduras. The synagogue was completed in 1997, and let's say serves as a central gathering place of the small Jewish community. It does. So it's a Sephardi synagogue also. So that's something to point out. And in addition, I think to the conservative Magen David synagogue, there's an Orthodox synagogue also in San Pedro Sula called Derech Chaim synagogue, also known as the Mishkan Shlomo synagogue. And in Tiki Pala, the only synagogue is the Shevet Achim synagogue, respectively, over here. Now, who's the chief rabbi of Honduras? Now, I think someone of the name Rabbi Aaron Lankry. He's actually of Monsi. We're going to speak about him more in detail. He would, I think, in the year 2019, if I'm not mistaken, would fill the position of chief rabbi. And he was the first chief rabbi recognized. And I think it was actually in April 2019. And I think, let's say, following the country's initiation of an officiate chief rabbinate. And very, very interesting. So the Honduran minister at the time of the government, it's actually reported over, he would actually relate over to news agencies. This is the first time that Honduras is recognizing a chief rabbi, and we are 100% willing and able to do so following the national oath of the Republic of Honduras. Now, Rabbi Lankry says in the article is interested in teaching the substantial amount of Hondurans. Many of them, I think, would claim to be descendants of Moranos, Jewish people, obviously, that practice religious secretly during the Spanish Inquisition to avoid, obviously, losing their lives. And in the article it says that it's a very large community of Moranos located in Honduras and all across Central America. Rabbi Lankry was quoted saying, "We are hoping to establish religious courts that will be able to help them and determine if they are really Jewish." This is what he said, I think, when he was being inaugurated. And he will explain also that the traditional Christianity of Honduras has been declining, which has prompted, let's just say, those who believe that they have Jewish roots to research their past at that point in time. So let's say a bit more with regards to the chief rabbi, Rabbi Lankry. I think it's very, very opportune time to speak about him here on this special edition over here. Now, anyone that's tuning in live at the moment, we're exploring the history of the Jewish community of Honduras over here on this special edition. So that's something that I will point out at the moment. And we're just learning about who were the great rabbis of Honduras and so on and so forth. So Rabbi Aaron Lankry, actually described as a dynamic, electrical individual, many years of international experience in the rabbinate and teaching Jewish studies. I think he began his career in 1989 studying in Kollel Ned Yitzchak in Jerusalem, and then in 1991, at the young age of 21 years old, he would take the position of the Ohel Leah synagogue in Hong Kong. At Ohel Leah, he gave nightly classes, administered at that point in time rabbinic functions, and supervised the kashrut heksher. The following year, I think he obtained his smicha, rabbinic ordination, from the chief rabbinate of Israel. He would study Hilchot Nida, Hilchot Kashrut, and Avelot also. And he would venture off at that point in time into many more things. Into Edmonton, I think Canada, where he established the first religious day school, a kollel, an outreach program in Alberta, and he would secure, let's say, ongoing projects with proper infrastructure and the ability, let's say, to achieve continuing growth. He returned with his wife to his hometown in Lakewood, New Jersey, and he would establish an outreach program at the Wharton University and Elkins Park, so really progress at various points in time. He would continue, I think, his education. In 1995, he received certification as a mohel, a rabbi that will perform Brit Milah, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, more accolades he will get. He would receive a certification as being a shochet, also shechita. In 2000, he received his certificate to officiate at Jewish marriages and divorces from the Bet Din of Philadelphia. Now, from 2001 to 2008, Rabbi Lankry brought his multitude talents to Aventura, Florida, where he became the chief rabbi of the renowned Bet Edmund J. Safra Synagogue, with over 300 active members and 10,000 visitors a year. The Safra Synagogue, as it is known, is the largest synagogue in the greater Miami area. While I think in Florida, Rabbi Lankry established a Hebrew-speaking day school, and I think also a mikveh. The mikveh is obviously a place to purify one's body. That's also in itself. So you can see the caliber of great Rabbi Honduras was actually getting at that point in time. So very interesting. I think he would also serve North Miami Beach and act as a liaison for several pro-Israel organizations. And I think Rabbi Lankry's enormous success as a dynamic and influential rabbi, the Safra family, if I'm not mistaken, commissioned him to open a community center and synagogue in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I think over there they would cater to the growing needs of the Sephardic community and the Therapy Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. Now, I think come 2010, Rabbi Lankry came on board, I think to the synagogue, I think which we were speaking about, as rabbi of the Beit Midrash Or Chaim. And very interesting way he used his talents, let's say, and vibrant kahila. He would also become the director of Yeshivat Pirchei Shonim college program. I think it's an online smicha program. And Rabbi Lankry always is just bringing Klal Yisrael together. So he would, I believe, become the chief rabbi of Honduras at the latest stage in time. So we can see the greatness just within regards to the rabbi and how many positions he actually had in of itself. He has in of itself. So he becomes the chief rabbi, but he's very, very well decorated, let's just say, rabbi. That's something that we have to point out. So yeah, very interesting. We're going to anyone joining in live at the moment. First of all, please subscribe to the channel. We're a community here. We're learning about the history of the Honduras Jewish community. That's what I will point out over here. Now, it's actually interesting just to say more things about Honduras in its own right. In Teglupia and beyond, there's obviously a very profound Jewish awakening that's been coming in recent times. Emerging Jewish communities, as I say, represent one of Central America's most moving stories of ancestral memory, especially descendants of Sephardic Jews who fled the Spanish Inquisition, were reclaiming, let's say, their heritage, an unprecedented passion and commitment, which is very, very interesting. That's what's brought out. There's a lot to stay over within regards to that. I think the revival began as I think individuals will actually discover family traditions that suddenly made sense. Candles lit on Shabbat Friday nights, avoidance of eating non-kosher foods like pork, whispered Hebrew prayers passed down through generations. This was the discoveries that have been coming in recent years, and various personal journeys to come out. And there's an organization, Kulanu, which has been instrumental, I think, in nurturing this renaissance. I'm not too sure much information about it, providing educational resources, rabbinic guidance, and most significantly, felicitation of the historic donation of a Torah scroll. That became, I think, the spiritual centerpiece of Honduran Jewish life. That's something that we've got to point out within regards to Honduras also. So very, very interesting. Now, it's actually interesting. I think there was, at one point in time, Rabbi Pinto would have a family wedding, a great rabbi, and the Honduran government will actually, officials will actually come and visit the wedding for interesting. This was just 2.5 years ago, in May 2023. By the Jerusalem Post, gives an article over here stating, I'll state over the article because it's to do with the Honduran officials. Rabbis, public dignitaries, businessmen and politicians from all over the world filled the Gabriel halls in Nesiona on that Tuesday night on the occasion of Rabbi Menachem Pinto's daughter's wedding. It's what the event united many shades in the political spectrum in Israel. Left-wing people, right-wing, religious, let's say ultra-Orthodox, secular, and I think non-Jewish people from many countries came to participate in this event. Naturally, the Honduran government officials historically would come. Now, Rabbi Menachem Pinto, whose wedding it was is the brother of Rabbi Yoshua Pinto, this is what the article says, the leader of the Shuvu Israel congregation around the world, and the son of Rabbi Chaim Pinto, the rabbi of Ashdod and Kiryat Malachi, accompanied by his brother in this wedding, Rabbi Yoshua, for many, many years, and is a full partner in the establishment of the Shuvu Yisrael Yeshiva Torah and Charity Empire, which numbers about 100 study centers and yeshiva across the world. He heads, I think, the delegation from Honduras and was the son of President of Honduras and her senior advisor, Jose Manuel Zelaya. Other dignitaries included Pedro Jose on that day, Barcoro Telequero, he's Secretary of the Economic Department, Miguel Medina, the Ministry of Investments of Government of Honduras, wow. Giselle Algendera Larach Moles, Advisor for Foreign Affairs, Rafael Rosendo Calandro Henley, the head, another head of Honduran Armed Forces. And this was a historic event of a Jewish wedding, a rabbinic wedding, where the Honduras officials will come. I think that specific day was very, very great. Well, I think great rabbis like Rabbi Shlomo Mahmoud, Rabbi Yuval Ashraf, Chief Rabbi of the Ethiopian Jews, Rabbi Reuven Vobshet, Rabbi Ilan Gozel, Rabbi Rab Nagar, head of the Or Lanaor institutions, Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi, Rabbi Adir Amrutz. They've come up with, he's, I think, the head of the Harim Missi Yeshiva, Rabbi Avram Baruch, the head of Yeshivat, Nezer Baruch, Rabbi Dan Mechabar, Rabbi Yehuda Sada, many of the great rabbis who actually come to this specific wedding where the Honduran officials actually attended also. I think Rabbi Yehoram Yafet, being the head of the Ma'orot Harashash institutions and president of Hamorot network. I think, yeah, very, very great rabbis in himself. I think delegations in this wedding, things that came in Israel from Morocco, as a senior government officials, businessmen, academics, members of the Moroccan Jewish community. They would visit Israel. Some of them, I think, for the first time in their lives to participate, I think, in this historic wedding, respectively. So that's very, very interesting. And I think, yeah, much can be said about that. So the Honduran officials would come at that point in time. So, yeah, so just to go back, I think various articles actually, let's say, celebrate when the first chief rabbi of Honduras was recognized, Rabbi Aaron Lankry, obviously being of Monsi in of itself. So that will make a huge imprint within regards to Honduran Jewry at that stage in time. Let's explore a bit more within regards to the history of Honduran Jewry. Now, we've spoken about spoke about the, just take a, I'm just going to take a short 1 minute break.
If you make a post,
Yeah.
don't mention that we're making our
Yes, so just sorry about the break over there. So now we are exploring about the history of the first Jews in Honduras. They arrived during the colonial period. They were obviously had been expelled, I think, from Spain, which we spoke about before, during the Inquisition. And many of these arrivals were Moranos, or crypto Jews, as so forth. Now, over time, they, let's say, completely assimilated and identified themselves as Christians. This might be some of them. Now, a descendant of these settlers of Jewish origin was someone named Juan Nepomuceno Fernandez Lindo. He served as president of El Salvador from 1840 to 1842. Now, he was a president of Honduras from 1847 to 1852. Remember, we already recorded a video about the history of El Salvadorian Jewry. Now, I think it was at the end of the 19th century, a small number of Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews arrived in Honduras. They were mainly immigrants, let's say, from Eastern Europe, Russia, Poland, Germany, Romania, and Hungary, and Greece, Turkey, and North Africa. I think come with the early 20th century, after World War I, Jewish immigrants, let's say from countries in Central Europe, they began to arrive in Honduras. This was largely a result of the Honduran government, let's just say, encouraging Jewish educators and professionals from Europe to immigrate to Honduras. Most of the families that arrived during this time later formed the two distinctive Honduras Jewish communities in the Galapa and San Pedro Sula. After the Holocaust, there was less than 140 Jews throughout the country. The settlement benefited from the 1948 arrival of over 60 Jews. A portion of, let's say, these Jewish immigrants played at that point in time a leading role in the growth of the Honduran tourism sector. And overall, the new immigrants, let's say, tried to maintain with their means a Jewish lifestyle. Although I think they came from religious homes, they were not, let's say, successful in their attempt to pass on the traditions of Judaism to the next generation. There were very few young Honduran Jews, and mixed marriages and assimilation became an accepted lifestyle. Now, some spouses, I think, would choose to convert to Judaism, I think in a very small number in of itself. Now, remember, once again, when we're talking about conversion, I have to double check if it was an Orthodox conversion or not with regards to Judaism. So that I'll have to double check on. I'm not 100% sure. And let's just say a very small number of these situations, rabbis traveled to Honduras just to perform conversions. So the following decade saw Honduran Jewish population slowly decline as intermarriage and immigration became more common. Come in the 1970s, 1980s, a large group of Israelis came to Honduras to work in engineering, in agriculture, in security, and they brought with them both their families and a Jewish lifestyle, which helped, reinforce religious life in Honduras. In fact, that period, a group of Honduran who had spent some time in Israel had returned with a better understanding of the country and the heritage, created the Honduras, Israel Cultural Institute, further strengthening the cultural practice of Judaism. Now, the Jewish community founded the first synagogue, as we said before, in Tegucigalpa in 1997, but as we mentioned before about Hurricane Mitch, that will destroy at 2002, will rebuild the synagogue with international aid, as we said on the onset. And it's actually interesting. Honduran Jews, as we mentioned before, live peacefully, and political, social, and cultural life is good over there. And we mentioned about Ricardo Maduro, who served as Honduras's first Jewish president between 2002 to 2006. Let's speak a bit about the Holocaust period. A few Jewish refugees, I think from Germany, were able to reach Honduras in the 1930s after the development of, unfortunately, there was a terrible Nazism that took place. But the Honduran government severely limited the immigration of Jews, Roma, and other foreigners in 1939. Nonetheless, a sizable number of the Jews are still able to enter the nation with assistance of Honduran councils positioned around Europe. Additionally, Honduras granted numerous passports and visas to European Jews who had managed to flee the Nazi and the collaboration regimes. Now, President Tiborico Carlos Andiola of Honduras issued an order to the nation's European consul to grant Honduran asylum visas to young people who had fled the Holocaust through Switzerland or the Netherlands, and were related to some families who were already established, in Honduras. Now, I think there were appeals of powerful local Jews such as Salvador Shachar in Tigpolo and Joseph Brindle of Boris Goldstein in Sandro Polo. Many European Jews were spared their lives as a result of their efforts, and even if many of the visas were not utilized to enter Honduras. Now, but we're exploring the Jewish community of Honduras at the moment, the country Honduras respectively, and it's a special edition over here where we're exploring the history and learning more about the rabbis that might be associated with the place in of itself, and what actually went on during that period of time. So if anyone's joining live, please join our channel, subscribe to the channel now, and welcome. Now, the demography of Honduras, I think there's currently 1,000 Jewish people living in Honduras, according to 2021 report on international religious freedom conducted by the United States Department of State. The majority of them live in the nation's capital, as I mentioned before, Tegucigalpa, and there's also a small Jewish community in San Pedro Sula, as I mentioned before. A community life. Now, I'm using the notes here of the World Jewish Congress over here. Honduran Jewish life is primarily based on activities of the Comunidad Hebrea de Tegucigalpa, which serves as a body that represents community. In the last 25 years, they report over a substantial number of international Jewish organizations, including Women's International Zionist Organization, WIZO, also known as, an organization that offers childcare and safe havens for women, the Jewish Agency, and an organization that provides a framework for making Aliyah to Israel. And there's a Maccabi, a Zionistic youth organization, all started to work out of Honduras, respectively. Now, about religious and cultural life, we've spoken about the synagogues. Let's speak again about them. I think obviously now the Jewish community of Honduras is located, obviously primarily in Tegucigalpa and San Pedro Sula, with few surviving Jews remaining in La Quieba. That's another part of Colombia. So anyone that's, tuning in at the moment to the video, welcome at the moment. We are a community. We're learning about the great countries of yesteryear over here, and I appreciate everyone tuning in live. And very interesting. we're recording. We've already recorded many videos. So I'm just going to ask a question here on this live video because I think it's good to interact a bit now that we've got viewers on. So we're just going to ask a question. If you have visited, the question we have you visited? So obviously we're speaking about Honduras here. So that's a question I'm going to ask you guys here because it's a live video recording here on YouTube within regards to it. So so please everyone answer at the moment. If you have visited Honduras, I'll appreciate. So that's a question I've got to ask you guys. Okay, yeah, so very interesting. So we're continuing over here. So obviously Honduras, the Jewish community, if you have visited, please write a comment on the live video within regards to what it's like in Honduras, what's the community like, and so on and so forth. So that's very good. Okay, so let's talk about again within regards to the community. Now the community, we talked about the synagogues over there. Obviously small Jewish communities there are 3 synagogues: Shevet Ajim synagogue in Tegucigalpa and the Magen David, and the Derech Chaim synagogue in San Pedro Sula. The communities hold Shabbat services and celebrate all Jewish holidays, and there's a mikveh, purification bath, constructed for the Derech Chaim community. Well, the synagogue in Tegucigalpa was destroyed, as I mentioned before, in 1998. It was repaired, and I think there's no full-time Chabad presence. I don't know if that's still the case from an article, although I think the Chabad have roving rabbis program does stop there to learn with citizens. So there is some sort of presence. I don't know if it's full-time presence. I don't know if this is still the same case. Just more facts. As we said, Honduras was one of the first countries to recognize the State of Israel in 1948, and the fourth to recognize Jerusalem as its capital in 2018. Although it would later go back, I think, on the latter recognition. Honduras was one of the only countries to allow Jewish immigration during the Holocaust, thanks to a strong influence from the local Jewish community. Honduras has 2 presidents with Jewish descent. The first actually was Juan Lindo from 1847 to 1852, who was the first Jewish head or state excluding regional governors. Second, obviously, was Ricardo Maduro, who served as the president from 2002 to 2006. There is kosher food, I think, found in Honduras, but it's largely limited, I think, to imported foods in the capital of Tegucigalpa. Now, Jewish education, as mentioned before, there's Talmud Torah class, I think, on Sundays, a Jewish Sunday school, as mentioned before, and there's the Comunidad Hebrea de Tegucigalpa, which offers various different educational activities to Honduran Jews. Now, we spoke about the youth over here. Honduran Junior is associated with the Federation of Zionist Latin American Students, which connects young Latin American students with scholarships and leadership opportunities. Other Jewish activities are organized by the Comunidad Hebrea de Tegucigalpa, and there's a relation with Israel, as mentioned before. They've recognized the State of Israel in 1948, and and the 2 countries have maintained diplomatic relations, obviously, since. And as I mentioned before, I think Juan Orlando Hernandez has the distinction of being the first graduate of Israel's International Cooperation Development Program, also known as the MASHAV, to become a head of state also. And let's speak a bit about renowned Honduran Jews, people from Honduras. Obviously, Boris Goldstein, I think he donated land for the Magen David synagogue originally. Someone named Jacobo Goldstein was a journalist and businessman. Ricardo Maduro, Joes, politician, Honduran ex-president. Martin Bader Ormenta, famous lawyer, journalist, politician. James Rosenthal, businessman and politician. Yanni Rosenthal, also a politician. Another famous man named Yankel Rosenthal, if I'm not mistaken, who was a CD Marathon president, if I'm not mistaken. So very interesting over here. Friends, it was a special edition over here where we've explored the history over here on the special edition of Honduran Jewry over here. Just gonna go for a walk with you guys at the moment, as we will conclude the video in a minute. As we're a community here, we're exploring the history of all the different countries, the Jewish communities at the moment. We've spoken this week already about various interesting places. I think yesterday we recorded a video about Jamaica. We've recorded about various countries in South America already quite recently. We spoke about, I think, 7 countries from South America. Already we spoke about Venezuela, Brazil, Peru, Cuba, and it's nice that we're doing Honduras now. We actually spoke only yesterday, I believe, about El Salvador, which is also very, very interesting. So we're really trying to get the breadth of all the different countries, what actually went on in the various different Sephardic communities. I think it's just a very, very important thing to do. Yeah, so friends, anyone that's joining in, please subscribe to the channel. At the moment, we are nearing 8,000 subscribers at the moment. Now, what's interesting is I love to do these historic videos in different places. I love to go to different locations. What we also do on this channel is we record videos with great rabbis. Also, we try and get a burst of inspiration every single day from different rabbis across Israel, and some great Jewish personalities also. So that's like a burst of wisdom we get every single day, where for 2-3 minutes usually a rabbi will actually relate over an idea, maybe with regards to Parsha or with regards to learning in Eretz Israel. We do tours all over the country also. We love to travel. We go to different yeshivot, Talmudic colleges here on this channel. That's one thing that we do. We explore the archaeology of Israel, go to different archaeological places. We explore different restaurants over here and so on and so forth. So tons of content we have here on this channel, friends. So yeah, that's another reason to join and watch over here. So today we spoke about obviously the country Honduras. It's the I believe, yeah. So hopefully we will cover maybe this week do a few more videos on great countries, with concentrating on Jewish communities and the rabbis that those countries had naturally. That's definitely one of the plans that we plan to do, and fill up with so much more content in of itself. So watch your space for more great stuff, and yeah, we will keep going from strength to strength at the moment, and you know, just progressing further about this. I think on that note, we will leave you all a good night. Thanks for watching. We're just actually recording this from Zelvet. The Shavot. So yeah, so just reporting this from Bet Shemesh, and wishing you a great day.